Welcome back to the Raid My Lab preview show. The show itself will start on July 22nd, 2019 with a weekly episode. But in the meantime, I'm releasing some videos showing how I made the tech. We've already shown the soldering and the electronics portion of it and how to laser engrave the box. And the next two videos are going to focus on the PHP, the MySQL, the NodeRed, the things like that, the code that make the entire project run. Hope you enjoy. I'm going to go to the MQTT in, which is this one, and I'm just going to, let's see, I think I'm already configured. I'm just going to tell it to look at all topics. I'm going to no quality service. In other words, I don't want it to save it. And then I'm going to just send it to the debugger. So what happens is, now if I deploy and I come over here, it shows us nothing. But if I come back to this home page and go to input.php, then it gave me another random one. And when I come over here, it tells me a topic of something has been selected. So what's cool about this is, in fact, I'm not on the Raspberry Pi, I'm on my desktop, but I've been able to send a message pretty instantly. In fact, we're gonna look at this. I'm gonna drag this out to the side here. Try this here. I'm gonna drag this out to the side, and you're gonna see that every time I refresh this, like, it's pretty much instantaneous that we're getting this message over here. So now, what we want to do is we want to change our code. And we're going to give it a topic of, I'm just going to put selected. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to put what was selected. So I'm going to put topic. And the reason why I'm doing that is when you look at the PHP here, go to the right window. When you look at this, the variable is called topic, but the column is also called topic. So that would be pies. And now what's going to happen is when I refresh the page, it's going to tell me that selected was enclosures. And so if I refresh the page again, selected is relays. And so all of a sudden now, we've been able to take the PHP server, connect it to the database, and select something random, and then send that to the Raspberry Pi. And now we're going to do something even cooler with it. So what we're going to do is, we're not going to go too fancy and try to make this too pretty or anything like that, but we are going to come up here to this hamburger menu, and we're going to hit Manage Palette. And the cool thing about NodeRed is that there are so many different extensions for it. So we're going to do one called Dashboard. And you want to pick the right one. You want to pick the one called NodeRed Dashboard. And we're going to install it. And this could take a minute, but we're going to go ahead and install it. So you'll see what happens is it added all these other crazy things. So if I come down here to the left side, I have this whole dashboard thing here of all this different stuff that I can drag in. So I'm going to drag a new one in called text. And what we're going to do, we're going to get this up top. And we are going to double click this. And this is a little weird. I'll be the first to admit, this is a little weird. So we're going to add a new UI group, and we're just going to call it default is fine. And then we're going to add a new tab, and we're going to make it as wide as we can, which is kind of weird. I feel like you always have to chase it. So we're going to add that there, and I think that's good. Now, we're going to assign, okay, let's see here. This is a little weird. Again, first, all right, so we're going to give it a label called chosen topic, and we'll just pick this style, and then we're going to put, we're just going to call this UI. Now, it looks like we're not assigned to a group, so let's take a look at this again. So we're going to add a new UI tab, and we're just going to call it home, which is fine. Now we're good. So now if we update this, this one is part of the group home. Again, you kind of have to tinker with this. But anyway, so we're going to hit done, And now what should go in here, I think, is the... All right, so we're going to just see what happens. We're going to drag this together. And so right now, if I were to deploy this, you'll see that what's happening is it's coming to the debugger thing. So if I come and I refresh this one more time and I get LEDs, then this NodeRed thing is just putting it here. But what if we can make it a little bit prettier? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to come out here and we're going to copy this thing right here, and we're going to go /UI. Now all of a sudden, again, this is not what I want it to look like, but I was kind of hoping that would be fitting over there, but that's fine. What's cool about this is that this is basically a WebSocket, which means you don't actually have to refresh the page. When I click refresh over here, now these are two different computers. This one's on my local host, which is like 192.42 or something like that, and this is on 192.225. And when I refresh this page, it immediately updates on the UI over here. And so we're going to get a little bit more into how to make that better. But for now, just know that we've just connected PHP with Node.js and NodeRed and are able to make an auto-updating UI based on what the database does. Okay, so I can't really leave well enough alone. If you look at this right now, you can see that this topic is way over here, and it's just not very cool. And I'm not much of a graphic artist, but I don't like that. So I could double-click this and change it to where the label is right above the value, and if I hit deploy, you'll see that immediately it changes to this, and that's fine. But what we could also do is do a different kind of node, and so I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to come down here and grab a template node. And if you go to the description over here, you'll see that there's some examples of how to use some JavaScript to populate different divs, and you can use paragraphs and all the normal HTML and JavaScript and even jQuery stuff. So what I'm going to do, I've already written the code. I'm going to just drop it in there. You don't really need to understand the code because the example's right there. But basically what I'm doing is I'm taking two paragraphs and making giant fonts and saying today's topic and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to deploy this, and you'll see that if I were to refresh this, that I would still need to connect this here, and then you'll see that if I connect this here and deploy, then I can refresh the page, and what you're going to see first is that the topic is down here. Now that looks like garbage too, because you don't want to have to scroll that. So what you can do is double click this, and I'll be the first to admit this is a pain in the butt. So you need to come over here and drag this, and basically you're deciding how big do you want this template to be. So when I click that and hit deploy, now all of a sudden the topic is this big, and so I could come in here and refresh this, and every time I do, you're going to get a nice bold topic there. So anyway, that is the bulk of the software. Now we will do a kind of a cool feature, just a real basic randomization type thing coming up next. Okay, so I stuck a little really bad PHP snippet up top that lets me clear out all the ones that have been chosen so we can start fresh. But what I was thinking is it would be really cool if we had an effect where it kind of scrolled through the number, like some random topics that we could be on before settling on the real topic. So what I'm going to do is, before we just send the topic that we chose, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to write a new database query. So I'm going to say topics equals db query select star from topics, and then we're going to say order by rand like before, and then we're going to say limit, let's say 7, and so we're going to get the results, which means we're going to get all 7 rows. And what we want to do, we're going to do one of my favorite things in PHP, which is the for each loop. So I'm going to do for each topics. So for each of these, for every row we chose, we're going to assign that row a variable. So I'm going to say as t. Then we're basically going to do this to every single one of those rows. So what do we want to do? We want to send this. Now, if you notice, we're not doing the thing where we're marking it as chosen or anything like that. We're just going to send the name. And so we've assigned that as T. So we're going to come in here and call this T topic. And so basically what we're going to do, we've already selected the one that we're choosing is down here. But we're going to go through 7 other ones. And we're going to send those names there as kind of like a boop, boop, beep, beep, you know, like the computer is actually calculating. So what we're going to do is we are going to do a delay in microseconds. So if you wanted to delay for 2 seconds, which is way too long, you would do uSleep and then that many microseconds. So what we're going to do is we are going to generate a random number of seconds so that it's not a real static number. So we're going to do rand equals rand, and then we're going to copy this. And so this is 2 full seconds. So I would imagine the shortest number that we would want is, let's say, 1/3 of a second. So we're going to knock 2 decimal places off and put 3 there. And then the longest, let's just say we're going to make 6. So we're going to say we're going to delay between 0.3 and 0.6 seconds, and then in between sending each one of these. So we are going to, instead of putting uSleep rand or uSleep in that number, we're going to put that in there. And then, so now what's going to happen is it's going to go through each of these topics and it's going to send 7 of them with a random amount of pause in between each one. And then it's going to finally settle down on the actual topic that we're going to do. So we're going to put a full 1 second delay before it shows the last one. And if I did that right, then when we drag this over here and I refresh the page, you're going to get a random thing there, and then it's going to pause for 1 second, and our topic for the day is logic and voltage. And so anyway, we can tweak the numbers. Maybe I'll speed that up a little bit. But the idea is it adds a little bit of suspense to what our topic is going to be, and we did it with just a few lines of code. So the last part I want to tackle is just a different way to do sound. It's not perfect, but it'll give us a little bit of flexibility for being able to run sound from PHP. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to grab some snippets from my escape room. So if I were to come in to my sound thing here, I have this little snippet that basically what it does is it checks and sees if you're running on Windows, it's going to play the sound with something called CD or CMD mp3.exe. If you're running it from Linux, it's going to use MPG123. So what we're going to do is if you're on Linux and you're doing this on the Raspberry Pi, you're going to want to install sudo apt-get install MPG123. And I'm going to do that when I copy this code over to the Pi. But for now, what I'm going to do is take the CMD MP3 file, and I'm going to copy that over here. In fact, I moved it. I need to copy it. So I have that there, and then I also have a file called raid, which is an air raid sound effect. And so what we're going to do, we're going to, rather than worry about stopping the process or anything like that, we're going to take this little snippet and we're going to put this at the end. And so we're actually going to play the air raid sound at the very end. Now I may change the way I do it, but what we're going to do is save that. So now what's going to happen is when you get through, you're going to do the random jittery thing, and then you're going to show what the actual topic is, and then it's going to play the MP3 sound. And so if I were to bring this over here and snap that to the right and bring this in here and snap it to the left, if I were to refresh this page, you're going to go through all the things, and then it's going to play the MP3, you know, the little MP3 sound. So there's other ways of doing it. So just to bring it all home, basically what I've done is I made a few little modifications. I've made a place over here where I can see when the button is plugged in. You'll see it publishes that hello topic and tells me that the Raid My Lab button has been plugged in. This is just a little testing down here. But basically what's happening is I've come in here to this template node, and I am not a graphic designer by any step of the imagination, but NodeRed was a little difficult for me to override some of these things. So I came in here with my very blunt CSS overrides and a bunch of importance, and made something like this where I can come in here and make it full screen, and then if I push the button, you'll get the different things like this pop across, and then the sound should play. That's the end of the preview. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you on episode 1.